The stage was set for what should be a typical episode of The View, a round discussion in which guests are invited to discuss current affairs, usually under the careful moderation of Whoopi Goldberg, the program's longtime host this morning. However, there was something different. Rising conservative star Karoline Leavitt, known for her unapologetic stance against the biases of the mainstream media, was invited as a guest for her. This was an opportunity to challenge a narrative she believes have been carefully controlled for years by the liberal-leaning talk show. But for Whoopi, this was just one more day to steer the discussion in the direction she wanted. No one in the audience predicted that by the end of the episode, Whoopi Goldberg would not only be unable to control the conversation, but also herself. And all this happened on live television. When the cameras started rolling, the energy in the studio weakened a little. Karoline was sitting opposite Whoopi, her posture calm, composed, but her eyes sharp, ready for whatever came her way. The discussion began with a topic that is increasingly being debated in American media: bias and the silencing of conservative voices. Whoopi, as usual, took control of the conversation and set the stage for what she thought would be another debate where she could make her usual points and put her guests on the defensive. We bring guests on this program because we want to hear all points of view. Whoopi began in a measured but firm tone, but let's be honest. Some of these so-called attacks on the media are just excuses for certain people who don't like to be held accountable. Karoline smiled, unimpressed. I completely agree that accountability is important, she said softly. That's why I think it's so important that we also hold the media to account when they manipulate stories, silence voices they disagree with, and create narratives that don't reflect reality. The studio audience let out a mixture of applause and murmurs. Whoopi's eyes narrowed slightly. As the conversation continued, it became clear that Whoopi was not happy with Karoline's confidence. Every time Karoline made a point, Whoopi would interrupt, or try to steer the discussion in a different direction. But Karoline, Whoopi said with an exaggerated laugh, you act as if conservatives don't have all the media networks behind them: Fox News, talk radio, podcasts. You all have huge platforms. Karoline leaned forward slightly. It's interesting because last week a major social media platform shadow banned an independent journalist for reporting on a story that went against the mainstream narrative of conservative voices have such a strong presence. Why are they constantly being silenced? The audience reacted with gasps and scattered applause. Whoopi's face hardened. Whoopi set her tone harder. Now, I think part of the problem here is that people like to play the victim instead of engaging in a real dialogue. Karoline didn't miss a beat. I'm happy to engage in a real dialogue, Whoopi, she retorted. But it's hard to do that when every time I start to make a valid point, I get interrupted. A wave of tension spread through the room. The audience felt the change the moment Whoopi lost control. At this point, the discussion had turned into a power struggle. Accustomed to controlling conversations and silencing dissenting voices, Whoopi had met someone who would not give up. Desperate to regain control, Whoopi rolled her eyes and laughed. Riley, okay. I think we've heard enough of that. Let's move on. But Karoline wasn't finished yet. You're doing it again, Karoline said, her voice steady, but determined. You don't like where this conversation is going. So instead of addressing the points I'm making, you're trying to silence me. The audience reacted audibly. Some held their breath. Others cheered. Whoopi's expression changed. This was not going the way she expected. And then in a moment no one could have predicted, she lost it. Okay, you know what, Whoopi said, throwing her hands in the air. I don't need to sit here and listen to this. With his microphone still attached, he suddenly stood up and quickly walked away from the set. The audience was stunned. The other presenters looked agitated, not knowing how to deal with what had just happened. The cameras switched to a wide shot and showed Whoopi disappearing backstage. Karoline continued to sit calmly, self-possessed and understanding. Within minutes, clips of the explosive moment began circulating online. Social media exploded with reactions. A hashed Whoopi meltdown started trending as people discussed what had just happened. Some viewers saw it as a powerful moment when a guest refused to be silenced. Others framed it as a rare moment when Whoopi Goldberg was finally pushed out of her comfort zone. Conservative commentators praised Karoline's composure and lauded her for standing her ground despite open hostility. Liberal media outlets scrambled to distort the event and characterize it as a tense debate rather than a breakdown, which was clearly visible on air. Whichever side people stood on, one thing was undeniable: Karoline Leavitt had made a statement on national television. What about Whoopi Goldberg? She had just come off her own show. This was not just a clash between two people. This was a moment that revealed the changing dynamics of political discourse. It was proof that the days of one-sided speeches are over, and it was a warning to those who think they can continue to silence opposing views without consequences. If you think that such moments should be seen by more people, press the like button, share the video, and subscribe to our channel. because the mainstream media does not want such conversations to happen. So guess what happened? We're just getting started.